Welcome to the San Francisco Bay Area Chapter June membership meeting. This is Monica Stoffel, and I'm the president of the chapter, and look forward to inviting everybody to attend this live simulcast of one of our membership meetings. After this presentation, you will be receiving an email with a copy of the slide deck and a shareable link to the presentation. You should be receiving that either later today or tomorrow, and I encourage you to share this with your colleagues and your network. Let's continue the learning. We have a great lineup of presentations today. We're starting with the Career Corner, BC Careers, Assess Your Marketability, Formulate a Career Path, and Always Be Networking by Cheyenne Marling from BC Management. Following this is our educational program, Failure is Not an Option. Dive deeper into planning recovery for critical Treasury operations by Lisette Georgie, the Vice President for Wells Fargo Treasury Management. We will be having time for Q&A. And then Ray Bonilla, our chapter membership director, will be doing the closing comments. Let's take a moment to look forward at some upcoming events. July 10th in San Rafael, California is a DRI Collegiate Conference. This is going to be a great opportunity for professionals in our industry to network with the next generation of contingency planners. End of July is the second annual Bay Area Emergency Managers Conference in South San Francisco. And September is DRJ Fall World, a conference to which ACP members receive a 10% discount. And then October 14th and 15th is a Business and Community Resilience Forum looking at exploring issues, challenges, and solutions in planning for and recovering from the risks that endanger our ecosystems, commerce, and infrastructures. We also have some upcoming ACP events. For those of you who have not already put it on your calendar, October 23rd through the 25th in Texas is the ACP National Business Continuity Summit and Leadership Conference. And then we also have two upcoming webinars later this month. June 16th, the Active Shooter, How Do Your People Respond in Your Workplace? And June 23rd, Getting the Most Value from Your Business Continuity and Disaster Recovery Solutions. For those of you who are more local to the Bay Area, our San Francisco Bay Area chapter has some amazing events coming up, which Elizabeth, our program director, will talk about.
Hello, everyone. So we have a wonderful program coming up July 14th at the Oakland Zoo, as you can see. On August 11th, we have a program with the Alameda EOC tour at their county set. On September 8th, we have a huge program with Kalima, U.S. Coast Guard and Port of Oakland at the Yerba Buena Island in San Francisco. And then on October 13th, we're going to go to the Oakland Airport and go through their EOC tour. And then November 10th, we're going to join the 49ers at the Levi's Stadium. And then, of course, on December 8th, we have our annual luncheon.
Thank you, Elizabeth. For those of you who are on LinkedIn, I invite you to join the conversation and the discussions. ACP National has a LinkedIn group, and then our chapter, the San Francisco Bay Area, also has a LinkedIn. And here's just some of the recent posts and discussions we've been having on our LinkedIn group. So I encourage you to get engaged. Now let's get started with our first program, the Career Corner. Elizabeth, will you introduce our presenter?
Thank you, Monica. Welcome again, everyone. We're so pleased that you could join us. I'm Elizabeth Whitney, and I'm a board member of ACP, as well as the Director of Programs and Education. And as such, it is my pleasure to welcome an extraordinary lady to present on marketing your business continuity career by accessing your marketability, how to formulate a career path, and to network. She was the recipient of the inaugural ACP Hall of Fame Award in 2006, and most recently she was awarded an honorary MBCI by the Business Continuity Institute. Please welcome the CEO and President of BC Management Incorporated and an inspiration to us all, Cheyenne Marling.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for participating in today's WebEx meeting. As noted, I'm going to talk about BC Careers, a little BC Career Corner update on what we're seeing within the industry. Today, I'm going to highlight some of the findings that we collected from our study last year. We're currently collecting information from the compensation report that we concluded earlier this spring, so that report will be out shortly. So the data you're going to see in today's presentation is collected from the year before, but still very relevant information. Let me just try to page down here. Let's see, it's kind of stuck on this one slide. There we go. Okay, let me go back up. So, of course, today, we're going to use information from the study to really understand the market, where the market is right now, and what companies, more importantly, what they're looking for. You as professionals, you always spend so much time planning at work, planning with your program, doing BIAs, assessing where your program's at, and you really need to be opportunistic with your own career and kind of strategize and formulate a career path so you can look at where you are today, look at where you want to be in the future, and make goals for yourself to achieve where you want to be in your career. So first of all, we're going to quickly go through the market, where it is today, the skills that companies are really looking for, what our hiring managers are looking for. Look at where the candidate supply is light. So wherever that supply is light, companies are more than willing to pay more for those credentials, especially if there are certain credentials that they're looking for to elevate their program. The skills are commanding top dollars, and really looking at trends within the industry as well. So as I mentioned, today this study, this presentation is looking at the study information we collected from the previous year. Most of the study respondents were US-based, although the study was available in 5 different languages: Chinese, Japanese, French, Spanish, and English. So of course, this is looking at the total compensation. Now, when you see 2013 there, it's because whenever we collect data, this is the 2014 study, and it's always collecting on the year for the past. So we wait for people to get their total compensation base plus bonus. So even though this study was conducted in 2014, we were waiting to get the full numbers to be reported for 2013, and that's base plus bonus. It doesn't include any other benefits outside of that. So you can see here the average compensation base plus bonus for all business continuity professionals, and again reported in 2014, was just about $119,000, and that's all across the country. This is just U.S. information here that we have in front of us. Now, there's several factors that impact compensation. So whoever did participate in that study, whoever participated in the most recent study, we do have a lot of data charts that we're not going to go through today, but a lot of things that impact your compensation. Of course, job title, your total work experience, and that's not just within business continuity, but everything you've done within your work experience since education, academics. Your specific discipline experience, and we break that down by business continuity, disaster recovery, emergency, crisis management, even physical security, information security. You're doing much more than business continuity. In many cases, you have many different, you have your hands in many different pieces within the program. Looking if you're degreed, certified, your geography definitely comes into play. Specific management, program management, staff management, budget management experience, and the leadership experience. We're not going to touch on all these things today. What I want to really do is differentiate what really commands top earnings within the business continuity profession. So first of all, companies are looking for individuals to be strategic, individuals that can be team players, individuals that understand diplomacy, can think outside of the box to find a solution. But you also have to consider what you're looking for with your career. So you may not want to be a chief officer, a chief continuity, chief risk officer. you really want to assess where you want to be with your career, what works best within your work-life balance, because you spend so much time at work, you want to be happy with what you're doing, but you also want to make sure that you're happy on the home front as well, and you have a nice balance that works best for you. Now, some of the tangible skills in demand, what I mean by, so tangible, something that when you submit a resume or you look at your specific experience, you can point to, yes, I have a certification, yes, I have a degree, some real tangible skills. So companies, they do want individuals to be certified. We're going to go through some of those certifications quickly. Most importantly, if you're looking for a management position, companies do want individuals who have degrees, at least a bachelor, especially if it's a very high-level senior EVP, SVP position, managing director. They're going to want to more likely prefer to have an MBA as well. They want a wide range of expertise. What I mean by that is disaster recovery, business continuity, crisis management, physical security, risk, all those different disciplines that come into the program. Real-world experience, actually developing a program and activating the program during an event. Leadership skills, if they see you have leadership skills, and what I mean by as far as tangibles, have you served in a leadership position within an association? Have you given public speaking, written white papers within the industry? Companies want individuals who have rolled out a training program across the entire organization. You can create a great program, but if you can't roll out the training of that program, the program isn't going to be that beneficial to the company as a whole. Global experience, we are certainly a global commerce, and companies want individuals who understand how to work across the world, interacting with different cultures. So that's certainly very marketable as well. So certification, what is the magic number? A lot of the individuals who have 4+ certifications. A lot of those certifications seem to be self-study. So CERT, NIMS, so all those kind of self-study certifications. I would recommend to definitely look at 2 to 3 certifications to have in your back pocket. If you have more, highlight them at the bottom of your resume. You want to be selective and take a look at the 2 or 3 certifications that are going to benefit your career now and where you want to be in the future. So be very selective about what you're looking for as far as a certification. If you have too many, it tends to be a real alphabet soup after your last name and can raise some red flags. So which ones are most marketable? As you can see, again, looking at the pool of candidates, like we mentioned in the beginning of the study, percent of respondents, you can see by certification. The ones that are not as prevalent within the industry are the MBCP, which of course is a master from the DRI International, the CISSP, which is of course very information security focused, ITEL, intermediate certificate, and the PMP. Now, a lot of my hiring managers know about the PMP. They really put a lot of value on that certification. And from my understanding, it's not the easiest certification to get. So as you're looking, one other thing I do want to mention in this particular data chart is that we do have green circles around the certifications. Again, average comp, base plus bonus. The MBCI, a lot of those individuals tend to be based, when we look through the data, a lot of those individuals tend to be based in the Northeast. They tend to be working with European-based banks, investment firms, and many of the people who have the MBCI certification tend to either also have the CBCP or the MBCP. So many of the individuals with the MBCI have multiple certifications that tie in with the DRI as well, just what we've noticed in digging through the data. The MBCP individuals tend to be, have 10, 15 plus years experience, of course, very skilled individuals within the profession. And the CISSP is, of course, very technical within very information security focused. So the technology background is certainly bringing up the compensation as well. The ones that I see are very fantastic to couple together are either with the DRI International and the Business Continuity Institute. Tie that together, couple those together as a whole, or also look at putting those together with a PMP or ITEL certification. Now, if you're more security focused, the CISSP is also a very marketable certification to have. Another one that's not listed on here is the CISM and the CISA are also very good as well. My contact information will be at the end of this presentation. So anyone who has any questions about certifications, I highly recommend to reach out to me. Education, of course, and when I first got in the industry, a lot of individuals, you know, did not have a master's degree. As a whole, a lot of the individuals either had a bachelor or a high school diploma. That's because back in the day, I've been doing this now since 1998, a lot of individuals got into business continuity planning through the data center technology background, and many of them did not proceed with a college education because they could earn so much out of high school in programming. But now we're seeing a lot of individuals getting into the industry through a lot of different various career paths: finance, operations, management, program management, and these individuals in many cases are getting a bachelor and master's degree before they get into the profession. So we're seeing definitely more individuals with increased academic studies before they're entering the profession. Just looking at individuals as far as business continuity expertise, you can certainly see, again, I encourage all of you to take a look at the graphs and see where you fall, and look at the percentage of respondents, because it's very important to know where you fall within the pool of candidates. Now, of course, you see none there. There's some people that take the study that are only focused in disaster recovery. So whoever gets the study, we have about 20 different charts that look like this. The one's on DR, one's on business continuity, emergency management, crisis management. Another one we have, of course, here's DR, disaster recovery IT expertise. So, of course, looking at the breakout, the average comp is, again, always base plus bonus. Now, real-world experience, as I mentioned, companies, they want to see that you have actually activated a program. So, of course, at the management level, they want to know that they can count on you, that you're there, you've been through it, you have, you know, you have kind of a learning experience, or you've taken, you've definitely learned from activating a program and what transpired and things to take away and do next time. So of course those, I do have people that have actually activated programs more than 40 times. A lot of individuals who have several retail stores in many cases have done so. You're also looking at some other companies that work within very, well, in nuclear, also looking at some of the companies like oil and gas. So there's a lot of individuals that are only focused on crisis management. So it's interesting to see as far as how many times they've managed a program. But again, look at the pool of candidates. A lot of individuals in our industry, less than 5 times, have managed a program activation. Times that you developed a program from scratch. If this is a position that is more management, or especially creating a program from the ground up, they're going to want someone who's obviously already created a program already. So they have the tools, they understand what worked, what didn't work. One thing to always keep in mind is if you build a program from one company, it's not necessarily going to be a program you can replicate and implement with another company. Every company is a little bit different, so it's really important to look at the culture. But as you can see here, you know, many individuals less than 2 times within our industry have developed a program from scratch. Now, global planning, this doesn't mean that you should jump on the first plane and go work in Singapore or Australia or India. What this means is if you've been involved in the global process with business continuity, disaster recovery planning within your organization. Have you worked with other offices internationally in assessing their plans, exercises, working with them on a global basis? So again, I encourage you to also look again at the percentage of respondents as you go through these charts, and look at the base plus bonus, of course, for the average comp. So the intangible skills, this is what really differentiates a standard business continuity professional from a top talent. So those individuals that are really a top talent within our industry bring a moxie to them. They understand how to engage all levels across the organization. They understand the culture fit, or they at least look for the culture fit in assessing the program, what's going to work best for the company. They understand diplomacy, how to be a leader. If the company sees that you're a leader within the industry, they expect you to be a leader within their company, within the program. They look at being strategic as far as delivering business cases to executives. They think outside of the box. And in this industry, to stay a top talent, you always need to consider your personal brand. It's human nature to assess and predict how someone's going to react one-on-one with you and how they're going to react within a group. And your personal brand means more and more to an organization and the program as you elevate your career. So think about when you're interacting one-on-one with an individual, do you motivate them? Are you a person that someone wants to work for? So those conversations, one-on-one and within a group, and to the executives, they're building upon your personal brand brick by brick by brick, and you want to be very conscious and aware of your personal brand and what you project to others, because one bad decision, could potentially destroy that personal brand. So looking at leadership, again, as I mentioned, companies want individuals who are leaders. If you're a leader within the profession, they would anticipate you being a leader within the organization and really elevating their program and really being a champion. So I have a lot of companies that come to me and say, I want a cheerleader, I want someone to really cheerlead this program. And I'm not a big fan of that term. I always say, I understand you're looking for a champion. And of course, they're always receptive to that. So giving presentations within the industry. Of course, every time I give a presentation, I learn from giving that presentation, especially when I'm in front of an audience and have that dialogue back and forth. So looking at your, take the risk, go out there and take the step forward and sign up to give a presentation at a conference, so one of our association meeting. It's so very helpful because you will find that you grow from that. Because as you see from this data chart, most of the individuals have only given a presentation about 5 or less times. So getting out there and becoming more involved in the industry is so crucial. Publishing. If any of you ever want to submit a publication to the DRI or Continuity Insights, I'm in touch with them on a regular basis. I'm more than happy to forward anything over to them. So again, getting your name out there and publishing within the industry is so very important, because I can guarantee you, if you're ever looking for a job in the future, having your name out there, or if you see someone that's published an article and you're, pick up the phone, call them, talk to them about the article they published. Because again, if you're looking for a job or looking to elevate your career, building that network just from those conversations will be certainly very helpful in the future for you. Board member. Now, there's not a lot of upwards growth here in this data chart, but I can tell you just from my hiring managers, when they see that someone's an active board member, they do put that into consideration. Many of them, they see that and go, okay, this person's really involved in the industry. They're certainly a leader within the industry. Many of the companies don't tend to look at that and go, oh my gosh, that person's way too busy. They're not going to be focused on the job. Most of the time they look at it and they go, okay, this is obviously someone who's a leader. They're involved. If they're a leader within the industry, they're going to be a leader champion for our program. So it definitely creates more benefit than what this data chart portrays. So being a top talent, as I mentioned, looking at some of the data charts, thinking about where you want to be with your career, where are you now, making sure that you're always assessing where you are with your career, where you want to be, what are some of the skill sets you need to build upon, credentials you need to build upon, go out there and publish, go out there and give presentations within our tight niche profession. Always be strategic. Think about where you can take initiative, where you can become more involved. The industry has evolved so much since I got into it back in 1998. Back then it was very data center focused. And I think my first conference, I think it was the Hurricane Floyd conference back in 2001, I believe, maybe 1999. I think it was 1999. Back then, the big debate was disaster recovery, business continuity. What I'm seeing now, and I think this is a huge wake-up call for everyone out there, we're seeing more and more business continuity report into either risk management or information security or operations. The trending has indicated those 3, or executive office, but still executive office is going to transpire into one of those 3 areas. It really depends on the organization where it's best situated to get the most focus from the organization, the greatest buy-in, the greatest support, sponsorship. So business continuity isn't disappearing, as some people like to say. It's really evolving, and it's a whole enterprise program. So as you look at yourself as a professional in this field, think about where you want to evolve with the profession. Are you more risk management focused? Are you more security focused? Cybersecurity really ties into that. So really take a look at how you want to evolve, because the transition right now is it's not going away, but it's evolving in the placement within the organization and where the program sits as an enterprise. Always be networking. Don't be afraid to ask for a promotion, because I can tell you, your manager is thinking about their own career. He or she is thinking about their own career, what they're doing on a day-to-day basis, interacting with their management. So don't be afraid to ask to become more involved. If you want to become more involved in the global aspect of the program, or maybe another discipline within the program, definitely, ask for to have that additional responsibility. The only word of caution is I wouldn't expect an immediate increase in your pay, but definitely it's something that can come up in the future. Now, as I mentioned, kind of plan with your career, look at your tangible skills, what you have, what's in demand in the industry, conduct a SWOT on yourself, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Really look at your roadmap, your career roadmap. Always guard your brand. Don't ever lose sight of that. Understand when it's appropriate to seek a new employer. Don't just jump just to jump, because sometimes in many cases, when I talk to people that just jump and look for more money, they're usually never happy in the long run. And as I mentioned today, always network. Always tap into your network as much as you can. Even when you're looking for a job, tap in, reach out to them, give them a call. And if anyone has any questions in regards to writing a resume or interviewing, that's something I'm more than happy to discuss on the side. Always look at how you can become more of a leader, how you can stand out amongst your peers. When you are interviewing, it's really important to show genuine interest. I think genuine interest and thank yous tend to be really overlooked in this day of age, and it's sad. So always make sure that if you are looking, express genuine interest, make sure you have the thank you, and always be positive, because things just work out for a reason, and it's really the journey that you just have to go through. And now we have the question segment. And my contact information, of course, is there, so certainly anyone, please feel free to reach out to me on the side too.
That was wonderful information, Cheyenne. Thank you. So this is Elizabeth Whitney again. We're now going to open up a Q&A session for Cheyenne. So please submit your questions, those of you that are on your computers. So,
and if anyone wants to send me questions on the side, that's fine too.
So Cheyenne, I did have a question for you, and it had to do with the CISA and CISMs that you talked about that were good certificates to have as well. I'm not familiar with those. Could you just tell me a little bit more about those?
Yes, it's a CISA, I'm trying to recall it, Certified Information System Auditor, I believe. And then the CISM is a Certified Information System Manager, I believe. I don't have the certification list right in front of me. Those are still very marketable. I don't see them as prevalent on the candidates' resumes these days, and it certainly is reflective in the study as well. That's not the most common certification out there. But I do see some of the individuals have more of an auditing background, especially have the CISA. If anyone wants to get the certification listing from me, definitely send me an email. I have a document that I could send out. It's also posted on our website, but it might be easier to, if you have any questions on that, I can send anyone a document of the listing of all those certifications.
Very good. I have a question here. What industry is leading in terms of hiring BC professionals?
I'm sorry, what industry is leading in hiring BCM professionals? Okay. We tend to see more financial more than anything else, but the market, the recession really hit the financial industry hard. And in many cases, they're still recovering from it. The positions we place are across every different industry. I would still say financial is probably the most active, which crosses over into investment firms. We do work with hedge funds. Aside from that, we also see a lot of work with healthcare, telecommunications, and insurance and retail. It's really all across the board. But again, the industries are more heavily regulated, tend to get the most amount of work or placement activity.
Fabulous. I got another question here. Person asked, do you find hiring more active in certain parts of the country?
Good question. Most of our hiring tends to be more active, of course, in the large metropolitan areas, especially New York, Chicago, but then we also have activity in Atlanta, Georgia, and Dallas. Boston is also another location we've had a lot of activity in. But it's interesting because probably about 6-9 months ago, we had a lot of activity in North Carolina. We're based in California, and ironically enough, we don't have as much activity here in California. You think it'd be different given the upcoming of all the talk about earthquakes. California is not as active as the East Coast. We also had a lot of activity in the Northwest as well, in Oregon and Seattle, Portland and Seattle.
Okay. I've also got a couple of questions. What about the BC auditing certifications? They were not listed on your chart, and also somebody asked that they didn't notice any hang on one second, that just moved my chart. Someone said that they didn't notice any ISO certifications on your list. Are they not recognized by the BCP community?
They are, but those ones that were listed in the study in that data chart were the most common ones.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah, they're the most common ones. So there's a lot of certifications out there. When someone takes the study, we have it broken out by business continuity, disaster recovery, relevant certifications, emergency management, risk management, information security auditing. So we have all those different disciplines by breakouts, and then the relevant certifications under each discipline. So there's at least 60 different certifications to choose from within the study. But the ones that were highlighted today were the most prevalent out of the people who participated in the study.
Again, thank you, Cheyenne. That was some wonderful information. We're going to leave it there. If you have any additional questions, they will be sent to Cheyenne to answer by email later. So now I'm going to turn it over back to Monica, I believe. And then
I believe I changed to Lizette, so I will make Lizette.
Oh, Lizette. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you both to Cheyenne for a great presentation about kind of where the career of business continuity is going and some of the high points and areas to focus on, and Elizabeth for moderating the Q&A afterward. We now have our next presentation and presenter, Lizette Georgie. She is Vice President and Risk Manager of the Treasury Management, Internet Risk and Compliance Business Continuity Team in Wells Fargo Wholesale Services Group Division. She manages the business continuity and disaster recovery program for Treasury Management, including the Treasury Management cyber recovery strategies, focusing on offering continued service to Wells Fargo's corporate, commercial, and government customers. Lizette presents at Treasury Management gatherings across the nation, teaching treasurers about continuity planning and providing recommendations and solutions to guide them towards recovering their critical treasury functions. She has been a member of ACP since 2009 and is the current chapter secretary and past president of the San Francisco Bay Area chapter. She also serves as secretary to ACP's President's Council. In 2012, she was awarded the Continuity Awareness Award by DRII, and locally, she is an active participant in her community, collaborating with Bay Area agencies and associations with the ultimate goal of having a resilient San Francisco Bay Area and its communities. Her presentation, Failure is Not an Option, dives deeper into planning recovery for critical treasury operations. Lizette?
Thank you, Monica. Welcome, everyone, to the San Francisco meeting. I'm so grateful and honored to be presenting to you as a speaker. And I want to say thank you to Cheyenne. Thank you, my friend. You did an amazing job. Thank you so much for helping mold this profession. You have really done us a service. Thank you so much for that presentation. I'm going to sort of segue into some of the things that Cheyenne has shared with us. there is a reason I feel that this topic is really relevant. Cheyenne had said that the business continuity profession is evolving, and that is absolutely the case. Gone are the days where we're just focusing on the basics of recovering if we lose our facility or recovering if we have a pandemic and have a significant reduction in staff as an example. And so with that, I have been able and fortunate enough to be presenting at Wells Fargo's Global Payment Conference for almost 5 years and talking to a lot of businesses, treasurers, and controllers to find out and gauge their level of preparedness. And I'm finding that many cases we see very solid preparedness, but unfortunately in most cases we're finding that the treasurer or the controller does not necessarily feel that they're as prepared as they would like to be. They don't have that confidence that we as risk managers in this profession want to ensure that our business partners have. So the reason that I do this again is I'm trying to find a way to bridge the gap between our profession as business continuity professionals and the financial side of our companies. Why is this so important to me? Well, ultimately, our economy in this country is related to business and finances. And if we have disruptions for any reason at a company and the finances don't recover, it's a residual effect. So when I get to talk to treasurers and controllers, I do always start with how prepared are your critical treasury operations during disruption. You could see the list here. Either they're very prepared, well prepared, or somewhat prepared, or not at all. I never get 4s. I think most people know that they're prepared. We, on the average, see preparedness really more at the well-prepared, have good and tested plans, but could be updated and have better solutions. My true reality is I think we fall somewhere between the 2 and the 3, because where we are very well prepared or well prepared, we may not always be able to conduct transactions financially that are critical to businesses. So, what if your business was disrupted today? Do you know if the financial side of the house could continue payroll services to the employees, including your own paycheck? Do you believe that they can make daily investments without any penalties or loss? What about making their bond or tax or other payments without introducing risk or defaulting on liquidity? These are questions that our treasurers and controllers are concerned about, and I would encourage you to share this topic and information with them. Now I'm going to provide you some information that I really do hope all of you already know, but for the sake of clarity, I'm going to give it to you anyway. The horizon scan, I think everyone should be familiar with, and in 2015, these are our top threats. Business continuity has polled about 720 companies across 72 countries, and top 3 is data breach. I think we all are familiar with the fact that data breaches are unfortunately too often in the media, and they are incredibly disruptive to companies. Unplanned IT and telecom outages are number 2 of the top 3, and it's really interesting. The whole evolution of business continuity and recovery management, it started really hitting me when my own management asked me, what are we going to do when we have no internet? And I thought, well, that's a very broad question, but I was told to find solutions to what happens when we have no internet. So I attempted to go down the path of asking the same questions as my business partners and certainly discovered exactly what I thought. It's way too broad of a question. We need some substance behind the why. But believe it or not, if you don't have solutions in place, you're going to be severely impacted. And then, of course, cyber attack. This is unfortunate that this is the day that we live in. Cyber attacks are prevalent, and we have amazing cybersecurity programs. I would hope that your businesses are embarking on those or are getting more seasoned to mitigate risk, which is where it needs to be. However, as risk managers in the continuity profession, we also need to expect that sometimes our mitigating controls are not effective, and recovery is going to be what we need, that is going to be our safety net. So you should be putting plans in place, certainly, to recover from a cyber attack. So why is this important to you? These statistics are a little different than what we're used to seeing. 60% of organizations experienced attempted or actual payment fraud in 2013. And of them, 82% were actually victims of check fraud. The reason that this is an important figure is just so that you know, a lot of financial institutions are running massive programs of moving most of their activity on technical solutions and moving away from checks because check fraud is all too high. So if we're on technical solutions, we're going to run the risk, of course, of business disruption if for some reason that technology is disrupted. 76% of the state chief information security officers fear the state's ability to protect against cyber threats. And 16% of organizations report a high level of integration with their mission-critical third-party service providers. Keep in mind your financial institution is your mission-critical third-party service provider. So that percentage of 16% is incredibly low. So now we're going to look at something that appears very familiar. Please bear with me. I'm trying to give you a big picture here. We're going to identify and evaluating the impact of disruption. We in the business continuity profession, disaster recovery, emergency management profession definitely understand the foundation of recovery starts with the business impact analysis. Obviously, you already know that it's the essential component of your plan. It gathers information to develop those recovery strategies, and it helps you minimize risk. It helps you predict those consequences and explore vulnerabilities. You already know this. Why do we do this BA? Again, to highlight those potential risks, to identify the cost of failure, maybe the loss of cash flow, the replacement of technology, and so forth, or identify critical functions and processes. So now I'm going to look at a BIA differently. We're going to use a fictitious customer example because I really want to drive in on what the finance side of your company is more concerned about. So in this fictitious example, it's a government entity. They have a biweekly payroll and they pay about 35,000 employees. And believe it or not, this particular customer will also issue in that payroll 5,000 checks. I know you may be thinking that seems incredibly high. A seventh of the population still receive checks. I'll give you examples as to why people may still receive checks. Number one, you will have some people, even in 2015, that don't opt into the direct deposit, although you want to migrate everyone there. Number two, and this is the piece that people forget about, there may be a situation in which an individual has suffered some sort of fraud within their own account and had to open new accounts and had to trigger new direct deposits, or there's new employees that had to trigger new direct deposits. In those cases, they're going to receive checks for at least one or two payment cycles. So checks do happen in every payroll situation. This customer also has up to $120 million of payroll value. They are required to do bond, debt, and tax payments, and they have the high potential for regulatory and contractual penalties. Continuing with our fictitious customer, they are required to make vendor payments, which have the potential for losing discounts, or perhaps they're going to have penalties on late payments. Now let's look at their activity. They process over 500 wires and ACH payments monthly. That's a very, very active business on the finance side. They have daily investments, and they have the potential of interest income loss and penalties. So this customer's Treasury and Controller Office really needs to recover and have a solid strategy to do so. So how are we going to know whether or not we can identify some solutions? We have gaps here. Our customer is on the left side of this chart. The financial institution is going to be on the right. What happens if there is a disruption and the customer is unable to process their file and send it to the financial institution for their bond payment? They may have some sort of penalty for that. Or they're unable to send their payroll file, or the financial institution runs into some sort of impact and is unable to complete the payroll file or receive it. Same thing goes with the vendor payments, and you get where I'm going with this. There could be breaks anywhere within this process. Keeping in mind that all of these activities are critical to your business. So you need to find solutions and glean the information from the finance side of your company to ensure you're writing solid recovery strategies and really good testing plans to ensure that these strategies are tested well. I'm going to show you the example of a basic BA, something we're all familiar and used to seeing, and then we're going to break it into bigger components. So we're going to break up a process. It's called disbursements. The function in disbursements is payroll. I'm using payroll a lot because this seems to be the #1 concern out there within the finance department. So who's impacted if we don't have payroll completing today? All employees. What systems do you use? You may use some bank file transfer type of service. What's the financial loss? Maybe 9, but perhaps there might be some penalties. These are all fictitious numbers just for example's sake. What about the reputational loss? Well, that would be severe, depending on the size of your company also. Can you imagine the headline that says so-and-so company didn't pay their employees today? So also you find out what locations they perform these functions. This particular customer has it well dispersed across 3 different cities in the nation, which is good. And what are the interim strategies? If in fact the primary solution, which is some file transfer service, is unavailable to them, how else can they ensure payroll completes today? Does their bank allow them to issue the previous payroll file? Do you know? Do you have it documented? Or maybe there's another ACH sort of application that they can use in the interim that their primary service is unavailable. You should know the answer to those questions. Another function, and we'll do one more after this. Disbursements again, and this time it's vendor payments. Now remember, we're talking about a government entity, so who's impacted? It could be any of their suppliers, for example, a water supplier or a travel vendor. If imagine, maybe I'm talking about some, city, and they have to pay the vendor that supplies the food to feed the lions, as an example. What systems do they use? They may be using an ACH application or some sort of check processing system or a wire transfer to do these payments. Is there financial loss? If they can't do it today, there could very well be. Would there be any penalties? Absolutely. Depending on the vendor, depending on the contracts. Is there a reputational loss? Well, sure, absolutely. You may have severed not only a reputation for your company, but the partnership with your vendor. In this example, they do it in only one location. I'm sharing this with you because I'm noticing that not all Treasury functions are well dispersed across geographic areas, and so I threw that in as the example. And what's their interim strategy? Well, maybe they can use a mobile application to complete their transaction, or another file transfer service, or a wire service on another channel. Maybe there's a voice kind of wire service that they could utilize. That's pretty much the extent of what I'm understanding is happening currently today in the business continuity level. We'll do one more example. This is a little fun one because I am talking to the BC professions, and I know many of you. This is the holiday party, and many of you love to have your good parties, so I thought I'd show you what it looks like, right? Who's impacted? The vendors. What systems are used? Usually when we do this kind of activity from a finance perspective, it's usually checks. Is there a loss? Absolutely not even from a reputational standpoint, except for, unless the BC people are missing out on their party. And the party was going to be in Charlotte. See that? What happens? What's our interim strategy? Nothing. Obviously, this is one of those place and hold. It doesn't matter. It's not critical. So with that, I'm going to take a moment to breathe. And now we're going to dive deeper into the kind of information I would like you to start looking in when you're doing your BIAs with the financial side of your company. This is the kind of activities, collections and disbursements, cash concentration, investment and funding, and financial risk management that they need to do. They may have to do all of them with one financial institution, or they may have multiple financial institutions to do this activity. But it's critical to them. And if They are recovered because they were able to log in somewhere else because you have an amazing reciprocal agreement for their relocation, or they were able to recover for whatever reason because you documented a good plan. Can they still do these things? I want to stop for a moment and explain something. After Superstorm Sandy, my team, we had a really great opportunity to talk and pull experiences from some of our customers. And what I learned when, after Sandy hit, I actually had the pleasure of presenting in New York about 6 weeks later. And I learned from people in the audience that, they didn't know what their solutions were. One lady said, I didn't realize that the system I logged into was anytime, anywhere banking. I could have totally completed our transactions from my home. And I told her, I said, stop, don't beat yourself up. It's okay. You identified a gap, and now you know your solution. So keeping in mind, some of the solutions are simple. So now let's go a little deeper. Is your company resilient in collections? I'm going to tell you, most people say yes. I think that's fabulous. That means you can receive your money and you know how you're going to receive your money. Are they resilient in disbursements? We have a mixed bag depending on my audience. Sometimes it's yes, but usually it's somewhat. And I think that's because of that big payroll concern, because that's a disbursement activity. So I would certainly like to see that bump up to yes. And you guys are going to help me make sure that we do that in our companies. Now we're going to show you a little bit more in how you want to get to the core of the BIA information that you need from the services, financial services side of your company. So looking again at the critical banking functions, it could very well be as simple as sitting down with the finance department and saying, okay, what's everything that's important that you need to do every single day? And ask them to give it to you in the simple terms, payroll, bond payments, whatever it is, list it down, and then you're going to go further. Sorry, I went a little bit too far. What financial institution are you doing those with? You may find that some of you have 2 banks to do payroll. I'm going to tell you right now that's a really good idea. You may find that some only have 1 for any of these. You list down the financial institutions. Then you list down the systems that they use to complete those critical transactions every day. We're going to go further. You need to know who has access to those systems. What can they do on those systems? Are there privileges? What are their authorizations? Are they an initiator, an approver? And if these transactions require those things, what are their limits? You want a clear picture of how that looks, because by doing just this much alone, you already find gaps. I'll show you in a gap right here that we can see. This bond payment, Madison Green is the only person that does it. She can approve and she can initiate, and her limit's only $5 million. Maybe that customer doesn't have a whole lot of activity, and that's okay. But if Madison Green is unable to work today or the next 5 days or the next 5 weeks, who's doing that? So this is why you want to take this level of detail. And now we're going to take it even deeper. You're going to do this with each and every financial institution. You're going to now ask these questions. Taking those processes again and identifying which are the functions related to those processes. So if we're saying collections, let's say at one bank, Wells Fargo. Of course, I'm going to use that as my example. We have several processes. We do collections with Wells Fargo. We'll do disbursements with Wells Fargo. What functions at Wells Fargo for collections? Well, deposits and lockbox. I don't expect you to understand all this language. They understand it. I just want you to go deeper in your questions. What systems are you using to do the deposits and to do those lockbox? Does this have to happen every single day? And then you get that information from the treasurer and the controller. Okay, so if these primaries are unavailable, how else are you doing that? Do you have an alternate? And you'll find many of them know it. You just don't have it documented. So where they say, I don't know, you start charting questions that they will have to go back to the financial institutions, and they need to go and get the answers. This is not for you to do. Your job is to document their recovery. Their job is to know what to do. Again, pulling the information. Sometimes you know that's herding cats, but you need to do it. And you could see the same as we move forward. What are your alternatives processing tools during disruptions? Maybe there's a bank by mail option or a mobile option. Maybe perhaps processing with another financial institution. That's okay. If that's what your solution is, that's a great solution. So we want to understand more about those alternatives, though. And this is where the Treasurer and the Controller Office have to go and partner with their financial institution, and you're going to get them to get to that point so that they have that confidence that they are prepared to recover. So as an example, again, back to the payroll. We're still with the one bank. Does payroll have a mobile solution? In this case, we're saying yes. How about issuing vendor checks? We're saying no. Wire tax payments, we're saying yes. So you know which things can be done on mobile. I'm going to pause and tell you a story. It's called Mobile Save the Day. And I'm going to tell you exactly. In all our cases where we had significant regional outages, the one reoccurring story that I hear from a successful standpoint is the customers say, I used mobile, and I was able to do what I needed to do. You can't always do everything on mobile. We all know that mobile is a different platform. There's limited capabilities. But you need to know what you're capable to do in mobile and go document that in their recovery plan so that they know that they can continue those services, and they could be even going home and sheltering and continuing those services. Products, are there other alternative products? Perhaps for payroll, these are all the different ways you can do a payroll that we have listed here. And is there a financial institution? If your financial institution is unavailable, what are the other choices? You will ask those questions so that you can get the answers. You can get to the core of where the disconnect is. How do you perform these? If the primary is unavailable, find out, did they implement a solution at another financial institution, or do they know of a service within the same primary financial institution that pretty much does the same thing? So other questions I want you to ask while you're doing this additional, level of BA. Where do you store your security credentials? Again, back to Superstorm Sandy, I heard a story of a young lady that everyone evacuated their building in Lower Manhattan, and she learned that everybody left their secure second-level authentication tokens in the office. I don't know why she did this, but she chose to climb, I think, 50 flights of stairs, and I'm not exaggerating, and swept the floor and grabbed all those tokens for her coworkers and came back down. That was unnecessary. Had she known that there were other alternatives for how they would have security credentials during that moment of crisis, she could have saved herself that trip. I'm sure her legs were burning for a few days afterwards. So you want to know where your critical Treasury and controller employees are keeping their security credentials, and if they are key to a finance transaction, you need to tell them, just like you tell them to take their laptops home, they need to take those home too. And if they don't know where they are, they need to at least know what the alternative is to having that security credential when they don't have the key fob in their hand. How do you access services when your security credentials are unavailable? I just said that. Which services require approval authorization? You want to know clearly of the critical services that they do with their banks, which ones require approvals, and are there additional authorized approvers requiring access? Because this is a perfect time for them to look at the big picture and say, I think we need to get more people involved in this process. Also take a look at the locations while you're at it and determine if you are too heavily centralized in one location or not very well geographically dispersed, and make those suggestions that perhaps they should cross-train and give access to someone in an unaffected or more remote area. What is the process to get additional users access? You want to have that documented in the BCP, because during the moment of disruption may be the time that somebody might be needing to give somebody access. And who has access to all those alternative solutions that you guys are identifying? Because some solutions require different credentials and different users, maybe a whole different department, so you want to know who has access to them. And how do I mitigate fraud risk during a disruption? That's a big one. We all know that moments of disruption are an avenue for many things, and from a financial standpoint, it's an avenue for fraud. That whole smokescreen aspect is very, very real. And so we want to make sure that your company is still mitigating the risk of fraud while they're managing through the disruption. So they need to talk to their bank and find out how they can do so when they're in the interim of recovering. Banking services to consider for recovery. These are, many financial institutions offer these kinds of services, so you should ensure that you're having this dialogue with the treasurers and the controllers to ensure that they are aware that these solutions exist and that they consider opting into them. Mobile platform solutions, as I mentioned to you, mobile often saves the day. So ensuring that the Treasury and the controllers understand what they can do on mobile and understand how to log in and even utilize it once in a while. File transfer services. Typically, a file transfer service with a financial institution is just a place in which you say, take the money from this account and give it to that beneficiary. It's that simple. So there's a lot of recovery that can happen if they opt into some file transfer service to allow them to continue moving money around. Alerting or messaging features. There was a company that had a disruption, and in the process of evacuating and making sure that all of his employees were safe, this one individual was pushing everyone out of the building and telling them, you know, go home, we've got it. I just want you to be safe and safe with your families. And it was also payroll, and they'd queued up payroll. The problem is this manager was focused on ensuring everybody left and made it home safely, that he forgot to approve the payroll. He was also the approver. This could have all been avoided for him because the payroll did not go through. It could have been avoided if he would have opted into the alerting or messaging feature of his tool, of the service that his financial institution provided. He would have seen an email or a text that says that he had something pending approval and would have discovered that he hadn't finalized the payroll. So opting into this free features, almost all banks have it, you should do it. Commercial card services. This one is one that I really think is underrated, and people need to know more about it. Most financial institutions have and offer commercial card services to their customers. This is where your company issues credit cards. A lot of us have finance accounts, credit cards. Well, banks can also issue them inactive and activate them only when necessary. So find out if your financial institution has that level of service with their commercial card. You could literally issue these only for those that need to have access to commercial cards during moments of crisis. You activate them with a simple phone call. The limits are already pre-decided. You already have them active in their wallets, and they only use them during crisis. And guess what? The beauty is when you're at the end of your situation and you're more recovered and you're starting to fill out the insurance papers, you have all of your expenses, you know, categorized within the commercial card, so it's easy to transfer over to an insurance claim. I love this particular service that most banks offer, and I would consider that your finance department opts into it. Annual consultations to validate your banking assumptions and your key contacts. I highly encourage, just like you do record validation with all of your BCP people and making sure all the contents in your plan is still current and viable, the finance department needs to be doing this annually with their bank. They need to make sure that all the alternatives that they have opted into are still viable. They need to make sure that if they've implemented any new services, that they have solutions for those as well, and they need to ensure that they have their contacts updated as well. And all of that, of course, should be added to the business continuity plan. And lastly, requesting, of course, that your financial institution participate in the test that you perform. Your financial institutions will partner with you. They'll be happy to be a participant to your test to help address any discussions or gaps. Often, you know, inviting them even to just a tabletop to understand where their limitations are and see if there's any gaps is really, really essential to ensure that there's recovery in the finance side of the house. So with all of that, we're going to try to bridge the gap, of course, between the customer and the financial institution. So currently, you know, we had all these breaks that I shared with you earlier. With all of these services and possible alternatives, as I mentioned to you, you can find a way to bridge that gap and ensure that the finances still continue, all those critical financial functions continue, regardless of these disruption points, because you have put plans in place and documented them and tested them to ensure that the customer can continue doing what they need to do with their financial institutions. So where do we go from here? Our financial institutions are willing to answer questions that they receive. So when you're in the process of an RFP as an example, what are the kinds of things that you want to be asking? Or maybe you're in an annual review with the financial institution. What should you be asking? Some of this will be repetitive, but I really want to drive it in with you. Mobile options, again, I can't share enough with you how mobile has really been an amazing solution. The user access process is really critical as well. Some of the alternatives to those critical functions, which I'll show you right now, some alternatives to critical functions actually require implementation in advance. You know, that whole preparedness aspect of what we do, well, it's definitely prevalent in preparing your finance side. You need to understand what those alternatives are. You need to understand if they require implementation or prior enrollment, and you need to understand how to get more user access in the future in case that has to happen during the moment of disruption. And of course, you also want to understand what the testing options are. I'll give you an example. For a customer that might opt in a solution for wires to maybe a different channel like a voice wire, a lot of banks offer that as a solution. It's a completely different platform. Have them issue a wire in that alternate at least once a quarter, because it's going to be a very different process than what they're used to doing every day. It's a very simple test. It becomes tried and true and known. So those are simple little things that you can be doing. What are the recovery times for each of the services? So those systems that you identified in your deeper dive BIA with each financial institution during your annual reviews or your RFP phase, a request for proposal, perhaps you're shopping around for a bank, find out what the recovery times are for each of those critical services. You need to know what you can expect, and you need to know that it works with your business. How will you disperse cash during incident response? How is that possible? What are the alternatives to making deposits or withdrawals? You know, a lot of, like I said, a lot of our services are becoming more and more technical, and what isn't technical is being driven to be technical. So you need to understand, how else do I get a deposit, or how else do I do a withdrawal? What are the alternatives to payroll service? This one is, like I said, the biggest sore point that I have seen across the board. And so I would absolutely encourage you to schedule a meeting with the finance side of your company and start asking these questions, and start with the payroll, because that actually directly impacts you. I know personally, I want to know that I'm getting my paycheck, because I do depend on that every single time we get paid. And so you're going to want to close that gap, because it absolutely impacts you if you don't. Will ATMs be available during emergencies? All financial institutions handle this situation. Find out what your financial institution is proposing for you. And what are the solutions for transportation disruptions? You do realize that when roads are closed and so forth and planes are grounded, everybody's affected. That includes money not being moved around. This is one of the main reasons the whole electronic deposit system actually came into play, right? After 9/11 and planes got grounded, deposits didn't go through, and now deposits don't necessarily need the checks to transfer from place to place. So what are the solutions if there is a transportation disruption? If you have a lockbox and a lockbox location is closed down, what happens? Banks have solutions for that. You want to know how that affects you if there is no solution for that. And how will we continue to receive support in the event that our customer service is disrupted? Perhaps the bank is going through their own issues. Obviously, with Sandy, it's a big regional event that we all went through. Companies were disrupted, financial institutions were disrupted, stores or branches were closed, ATMs were down, things were running on generator power, lockboxes were having to transfer to sister sites. There was all sorts of chaos going on. Customer service still continues because our banks have really good, solid solutions on how to ensure you, customer, can still make a phone call and still get somebody to service you. We want our customer service. Banks want to make sure that the needs of our customers are met. So you need to know how you continue that support. And you want to make sure that it's documented in the Treasury and Controller's Office BCPs so they know what they're doing. And in some cases, banks may actually sit down with their customers and help document some of these solutions. And so encourage your treasurer or your controller to go talk to the financial institution and see if together they can document a plan that works for both. And then your job is even easier. Maybe you attach it to your BCP. But this is something you need to be doing because the finance needs to be recovered. Again, back to the whole economic impact. I really love this country. I know you do too. That's one of the reasons we all do what we do from a recovery perspective, and we do it with heart. Please go and help the finances recover. So with that, that actually brings me to a close in the message. I think you've all seen this before. Every disaster is a crisis, but not every crisis is a disaster. So I'm going to open it up now at this point to questions. Monica.
So we do have a few questions that came in. Thank you, Lisette, for the wonderful presentation and really looking at the recovery of the Treasury operations and things to consider as we're working with our bank to help bring our organizations back after disruption. Let's start with the first question. This was sent in by George. Most of us have BIAs built into our DR and BCP processes. Is there a general BIA template or checklist that we could reference, perhaps finance and IT areas?
I did create a general BIA that adds this level of questions, and I will provide it to ACP so that we can have it for our membership.
Okay. Thank you. And this is a reminder, if you have questions, submit them in the chat, and we will bring them up and ask our presenter. What is the differentiation between a cyber attack and a data breach?
Well, that's really more a question for the IT professional, but I'll take my stab at it based on my experience. A data breach is data that's been compromised within an organization. Often there's regulatory requirements around how that needs to be responded and what kind of communication has to be stated to customers and the timeliness of all of that process. Whereas a cyber attack can be many different things. Cyber attack is not one thing. It could be someone's attacking the technology, maybe IP addresses. Maybe there's a denial of service occurring at a company that's denying customers to log in. And perhaps, you know, there could be a situation in which customers are just unable to log into financial services or unable to log into their own networks. And that will keep them from being able to transact with the bank. So the data breaches are really about compromised information that can create havoc, right, and fraud and potential for fraud or identity theft, whereas the cyber attack is really about not letting you do what you need to do.
Thank you. And then are there any other questions? If you have questions, submit them, because those are the only two that we've had submitted so far. But we do have somebody who made a comment. This was during the Banking Services to Consider section. It's also good to identify where wet signatures are required and find a way to automate the process.
That's a good point, and I'm glad that that comment was made. I also want to add something, keeping in mind that your authorized users on those financial institution platforms are not necessarily the same people that are authorized signers at the store level. And so if there's a significant disruption, you need to know who the authorized signers are if you're guiding people to a store or a branch to complete transactions like a wire. So we are learning ourselves at Wells Fargo that that's a gap that we need to find a way to close. And it's not simple because we've migrated people onto technology and given this opportunity to create more users to help, manage finances efficiently. Yet at the service or the store or branch level, you still just have the core 4 or 5 people that are signers, and they're not the same people that are the users. Unfortunately, there's no simple answer for that, but I'm going to tell you as a person that's working with the financial side of your company, go and ask that question. Are your users the same people that are mapped over to be signers? And if not, if in fact your only solution is to manually step into a branch and complete your transactions, you need to make sure some of those users are also authorized signers because the branch won't allow you to move forward if that's not the case.
Great points. And we've actually had questions come in based on kind of what you're talking about and the rest of your presentation. What is the RTO of ATM machines in the metro areas?
That is something that is unique to a financial institution, and that's a good question. So you're going to want to ask your financial institution, but from experience, I can tell you this. Most financial institutions, when there's a regional outage, have mapped out where their priority areas are within a region. So a metropolitan area would be higher priority than perhaps somewhere rural. And so if, in fact, power is out or ATMs are shut down, what's going to happen is they create a priority order in which they bring them up, either with generator power or so forth. The other thing is many financial institutions will mobilize ATMs, if you will, cash carts or whatever they want to call them, and bring them to a perimeter if they need to, a safe perimeter from where the impact area is, and give you the opportunity to use ATMs from a mobility type device.
Thank you. So it's sounding as if, well, you have your experience. Each bank is going to be slightly different and touch base with them, which is a great way to start the conversation, reaching out to your bank. We have another question. Will the BIA template that you mentioned, Lisette, be distributed with the slide deck, or will that be separate?
I don't mind distributing it with the slide deck. I can get it to our wonderful sponsor so that it can go along with.
Okay. Thank you. And that should make it available to everybody who's on the call, who's an ACP member, as well as all of our guests who are joining us. But if you do have any questions, comments, or would like to reach out to the San Francisco Bay Area chapter, you can always send us an email at sfacpchapter@gmail.com, and we would love to hear from you. We have one last question, and then we're going to wrap this up, and you can always send us your questions via email as well. We have participated in a scenario to test our reactions to disruptions. This is coordinated by the Department of Homeland Security with corporations and financial institutions. The person asking this is from a corporate company and would like to participate in additional scenario testing. Are you aware of any other testing programs?
Unfortunately, no, I'm not off the top of my head. I would encourage you, again, to talk to your financial institution and see what solutions can be put together.
So.
I'm also going to make one more comment. There's a lot of information out on the FEMA site. I know that many of you are very aware of what a wonderful resource the FEMA site can be. So I would encourage you to check that out to see what else you can find from this perspective. It was brought to my attention not too long ago that the Emergency Financial First Aid Kit, or what they call the EFFAK, checklist and form, it's dated September 2014 from FEMA. And I combed through it and I thought it was really wonderful. It's really about personal financial preparedness, but it allows you to have a place where you're documenting maybe your solutions for personal finances, like your household finances, where you store your credit cards, what those numbers are so that you can close them, what the customer service phone numbers are so that you can address them, emergency notification or payments information, insurance policies, or other sorts of incomes. The document is amazing, and so I encourage you to go out to the FEMA website and pull out the Emergency Financial First Aid Kit to comb through it. It's about maybe 24 pages or so, and it's a really good tool to do some personal financial preparedness at home.
So, thank you for sharing the resource, Lisette, and for your presentation and giving us those insights. Let's transition over and start wrapping up the meeting.
Okay, I will send to you, Monica.
Thank you. Okay. So before we end up, Ray Bonilla, our membership director, is quickly going to talk for anybody who's not currently a member of ACP, how easy it is to join. Ray?
Thanks, Monica. And thanks, everyone, for joining today's meeting. Lisette, you did a wonderful job and, again, delivered a fabulous presentation, so thank you for doing that. And Cheyenne, you're a great partner, so we appreciate you opening up today's meeting for us. Joining ACP, for those of you who are guests, we want to welcome you to today's meeting, but joining is quite simple. It's actually as simple as 1, 2, 3. So you log on to the ACP website. There's an opportunity to click join or join today. You're going to you're going to sign up as an individual member. And for those of you interested in membership in the San Francisco Bay Area chapter, make sure that you affiliate yourself with that chapter so you become a part of the distribution list for upcoming events, activities, and future meetings that the chapter is hosting. If you have any questions about how to sign up for membership, you can feel free to reach out to Monica, Lisette, or myself, or really anyone else on the board of directors. The process is pretty straightforward. So thanks again for joining today's meeting, and for those of you who are guests, welcome, and we hope that you'll be members soon. Thanks, Monica. Back to you.
Thank you, Ray. I want to say a thank you for everybody who presented today, Cheyenne Marling and Lisette Georgie, as well as our chapter's board members who are on the call, Elizabeth Whitney, our program and education director, Ray Bonilla, our membership director, Lisette Georgie, our secretary, and then myself, I'm Monica Stoffel, the president. We're all happy to respond with you, send us emails. We'd love to continue this conversation outside of the webinar as well. For everybody on the webinar, thank you for taking the time to join the San Francisco Bay Area ACP chapter June membership meeting. And also, when you receive the link to the recorded webinar, we encourage you to share it with your colleagues, and let's continue the learning. Have a wonderful afternoon.